Is it meat? Raw meat. Is turkey? Ground turkey? Okay.
Fear not. How we doing on that, people? Fear's an interesting thing, isn't it? It's easy to say fear not. It's easy to say something like don't be afraid, but man, doesn't it just come for you? So I started thinking about this. Can you guys remember when you learned fear? Someone sit down and teach this to you, to like what to be afraid of? No, let me answer that for you. Like, it just sort of happens, doesn't it? So I started like going back thinking, like, when did I first like started freaking out over stuff? And I don't know about you, but take a minute and think, like, what's my first like memory of like being really freaked out of something? And I found mine pretty quick, and maybe some of you can relate. So if anybody shouldn't have been afraid in life, it was me and my two sister siblings. We had 6 of us, but there were just 3 of us younger ones at the time. And we grew up in a house where my dad was a Bible-banging Baptist preacher. So we had nothing scary around, people, all right? We didn't go to movies like you heathens, because that was just a bunch of nudie films being promoted, right? We didn't do that, okay? We didn't have cable TV. We didn't see like all the horror stuff. We listened to Christian music, not even Christian rock music. Like, we were super sheltered. It was a super safe environment. But I promise you, we learned fear, and I'll tell you where we learned it. We learned it in the basement. Anybody feel me? Anybody remember this when you were a kid? I got some nods out there. So listen, let's go back. I was born in 1970, so we didn't have these fancy basements like you people have now, okay? Nowadays, people come over your house, and you're like, let me show you the basement. You get all excited. You got your 70-inch flat screen down there. You got your little movie chairs and your fridge, and it's all decked out, right? You're proud. You bring your guests down there. When I was growing up, when people come over, that's where you slam the kids down there just to corral them up, okay, down there in the garbage basement, all right? There was nothing down there. It was just cinder walls, some funky stuff coming off there. The steps, remember these? They had no backs. It was just some slats, all creepy. Cobwebs, dim, just a bunch of boxes. My basement, people, I grew up in New Jersey. In our basement down there, we had a metal door. Anybody have this on the side of the wall that opened up into the earth? It was a fruit cellar. I don't know who's putting fruit in this thing. It was the creepiest thing I'd ever seen in my life. So we'd be down in the basement, and this is what was crazy about fear. We actually liked going down there. They'd send all the kids down there, and there's all the toys you lost, and you'd be having a good time. That was kind of spooky, but when did the terror come? You guys know when it came, right? We're like, hey, kids, come on up. Somebody turn out the light. You remember who got stuck? Well, like, you ever get stuck turning out the light? And you know what light I'm talking about. Terror came in that little dangly string. You guys remember these back in the day? We didn't have your fancy Alexa lights now. You had to go up to the little string that hung from the one light down there in that dark, creepy basement while everyone else was running upstairs. And now you got that thing, and you're like, okay, I can get closer to the stairs. I just need to I still got it. It's still on. And the terror hit once. You went click, click. And those lights went off. You heard every creepy noise in that place. You could feel the monsters trying to trip you up. You're going up the stairs, trying to have them not grab you, you know? And for me, with that thing down there, I was convinced I heard that door swing open, and here comes Gollum. My precious! You guys didn't think you were going to see this today, did you? Yeah, no. I just let that sear into your memory. Nobody said this is what happens when the lights turn out. We didn't have conversations. Everybody knew there was something so real, right? And here's what's really crazy to me. You would think after a couple times or a few years, that wouldn't get scary. It always was. We never found any claws down there. There wasn't any, like, hair left over, like, oh, I can see where he was sleeping last night. We didn't find any children's bones that had been gnawed on somewhere. There was no evidence that anything lived down there, and yet there was something in here that freaked me out. What is that, guys? Where does this fear come from? And it's interesting, isn't it? Because as we grow up and we kind of laugh at stuff like that, although I still get a little freaked out coming up the stairs sometimes, we realize there's not monsters, right? At least there's not monsters out there. But there's definitely monsters. There's darkness. There's something very real about that stuff that we were feeling. In fact, as we get older, we realize the monsters, a lot of times, the things that we see are the most hideous in the world, is something that comes from inside of us. Do you know what I'm talking about? Something monstrous, something dark. A lot of us say, man, I'm dealing with my demons. Anybody dealing with some demons in the place this morning? A struggle, a darkness in your life. Anybody in your life that you know they're in a battle with that darkness? I promise you, God wants to bring some hope for some people today that are struggling with that. My heart is so full today because we all know people like that. On some level, we've all been like that. And what's so important, guys, as we get into this amazing word that God's given us, what does Jesus do when he encounters that inside people? What does he do as he looks into the heart of man and sees things that absolutely terrify us? So as you're thinking about that, I want to invite you to jump into Luke chapter 8. We're going to look at an incredible story today. And the way I'm going to ask you to honor the story today is actually to stay seated, because I got to get through a big chunk. I'm not even going to put the words on the screen because there's just too much. So I want you to think, why does God tell stories like this? What am I supposed to learn about myself and the things that I'm dealing with? What am I supposed to learn about people that I love and things they're dealing with? And if I'm following this guy, man, named Jesus, how does he deal with the most evil, dark people and the monsters and the demons that are inside of them? So I'm jumping into our story here, and I want to preface this, that if you remember, if you weren't here last week, in this story, it begins in verse 26 there. Jesus and the boys, they're in a boat. Remember this? Last week, he called them and says, hey, I need to get in this boat. I need to go to the other side of this lake. I need to go to the other side. There's something important to me there. There's something value to me to there. We need to go. And during this boat ride over there, it says a storm came up suddenly. And these were professional fishermen that were getting Jesus across. By the way, Jesus is chilling in the back of the boat. He's sleeping. And this storm comes up and they're like, Jesus, we're going to die. He's like, guys, chill out, man. Like, don't be afraid. That's how we got this whole idea for this scenario. And this man calms the wind and the waves to get to his destination. And that's where we pick up the story. They're still on the boat. They haven't quite made it. So open up your phones, grab out your word, or just listen to me. But it says this, starting in verse 26. They sailed to the regions of the Gerasenes, which is across the lake from Galilee. When Jesus stepped ashore, he was met by a demon-possessed man from the town. What did that look like? For a long time, this man hadn't worn clothes. He didn't live in a house, but he lived in the tombs. They landed by a graveyard. When he saw Jesus, he cried out, fell at his feet, shouting at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, don't torture me." That had to be creepy. For Jesus had commanded the impure spirit to come out of the man. Many times it had seized him, and though he was chained hand and foot and kept under guard, he had broken his chains and had been driven by the demon into solitary places. Jesus asked him, and I want to stop right here. We're students of Jesus. We're disciples of Jesus. We're looking at some red letters here. Do you see a lot? Do you see a lot? You don't. But I want you to focus on the few that you see, because there's power in these questions. Sometimes it's so much about what Jesus doesn't say as what he does say. And he asks this powerful question, what is your name? Legion, he replied, because many demons had gone into him. And they begged Jesus repeatedly not to order them to go into the abyss. A large herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside. The demons begged Jesus to let them go into the pigs, and he gave them permission. When the demons came out of the man, they went into the pigs, and the herd rushed down. They ran down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. When those tending the pigs saw what had happened, they ran off and reported this in the town and countryside, and the people went out to see what was going on. When they came to Jesus, they found the man from whom the demons had gone out, sitting at Jesus' feet, dressed in his right mind. And they were like, sweet, this is awesome. No. My Bible says, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people how the demon-possessed man, he was cured. Then all the people of the region of the Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave them because they were overcome with fear. So he got into the boat and left. The man from whom the demons had gone out begged to go with him, but Jesus sent him away, saying, return home and tell how much God has done for you. So the man went away and told all over town how much Jesus had done for him. Guys, today's title is God in the Graveyard. We're talking about a God willing to go right up in the graveyard. And you can see way more verses, way more ground than we normally cover. And I want to start with this. I can't possibly answer every question today. I can't possibly go down every avenue that God, I admit all these different questions. Hopefully you have some questions when you're listening to that story, like what is going on? I can't deal with them all today, so I'm going to try to be faithful to some things that God was working on in my heart. I'm going to try to be faithful to some things I know that God's working on in so many of your lives in this room here today, and I want to start with this. This is what we do a lot of times. We start getting into questions, and what's this, and what's the area, all interesting. I want to start just kind of with the obvious. I'm a student of Jesus. I read the Gospels, hopefully you do too, because I want to become like him. And I've noticed something about Jesus. He really doesn't like demons. And I've noticed they seem to show up a lot around Jesus. You guys encountered any demons lately? You've been out on the street and had some person come up and like, whoa, demon. Here's a question. Who's cast out a demon lately? Like, well, I tried to cast out a couple at breakfast this morning. These little kids were driving me nuts, but other than that, no. Not those. I'm just kidding. Anybody cast out a demon? Let me check. I'm not seeing the hands. Isn't this fascinating? You can see easily from this story, Jesus is not okay with this stuff that's happening inside people that we love, people that we know, people that he cares very much about. And there's no way we would get into the story of Jesus without realizing that when he's calling disciples, when he's teaching his people to go out and spread the good news, by the way, that he's okay leaving people as they are. He's sending people out to preach, but he says, listen, guys, I want you to know something through me. You have power. I'm not down with the sickness that is in people, and I'm certainly not okay with these monsters, with this darkness, with this spiritual force that is plaguing so many people, because I have come to seek and to save the lost. If you cast out any demons lately? And I ask that because it's interesting that when Jesus is going out, Jesus is doing battle. He's understanding how things really takes place, and he knows something that a lot of us don't know, that people are not your problem. You ever watch Jesus walk into town? He ever goes, point me to the local bar? I got to go find these drunkies. I got to get them. Hey, where's all the gay people? Let's just go. Let me have a little talky talk with them. Jesus understands there's something so much bigger. We would do well to realize there's something so much bigger happening when we're experiencing these things. And where do we experience them? In our relationships, right? Anybody going through a marriage struggle right now? I mean, don't need to raise any hands. Don't need to elbow anybody. Some ladies pointing. Ooh. We all go through it, right? Everybody does. And what happens in those struggles with our spouses, what happens in struggles with our children, what happens in struggles with our coworker is, you're driving me crazy. I can't handle being around you. They become your enemy. You dread going to work. You dread seeing them on your social media field. What God wants us to know today is they are not your problem. There is something so much bigger happening. It says, guys, we need to understand, we don't struggle against flesh and blood. This changed my marriage. This absolutely changed the fact when I knew who to battle, when I knew who to get angry with, that I have an enemy, and it's an enemy that is trying to rule me. Anybody ever felt ruled by those voices? You sit there and you just let it spin. Anybody feel like it ever has authority over you? I've got to say this. I've got to do it. I know it ain't going to be good, but Bible's real clear. There they are. And what are they? There's something that we know from the time we're little. There's something dark out there, and it's super real. And it's the spiritual forces of evil that we're battling with in the heavenly realms. What's the heavenly realms? The stuff I can't see. It's super real, but I can't see it. But you know what? I can feel it in my heart. I can feel it in my soul. And it loves to live up here. Get you spinning. Get you thinking. To get you to be afraid. So let's talk about demons for a minute, because this is kind of what we do. And again, what I find fascinating about God's word at times, it's what it doesn't say that says more at times than what it does say. It doesn't say a lot about demons. You notice that? It just doesn't. But it tells us a little bit, and it tells us enough what we need to know. And there's some things I want you to know about what Jesus is encountering here and what we're encountering here. And we use this word demon, and it's interesting because they're angels. Do you know that? God didn't create, again, some golem-like creature with horns, and they're angels. They're angels that have rebelled. They're angels that didn't want to be under the authority of God and would do their own thing. In fact, that's what they're all about, by the way. Just do your own thing, man. You live you. They've fallen. They're angels. They can masquerade as light. They masquerade as these beautiful things at times. And all these things that God gets blamed for, these problems in our life. Jesus is like, I'm going to tell you something right now. You know who came to steal, kill, and destroy? They did. They did. The demonic forces. I've come that you can have life and life to the full, and they're incredibly powerful. Incredibly powerful. And probably the most haunting thing of all, they are able to invade anyone. They're able to influence anyone. And I'm like, whoa, John, you talking about believers can be possessed by demons? It's the wrong question. I don't believe that we as believers can be possessed by demons, but if you've been around any Christians at all, you can clearly tell we can be influenced. I don't know about you. I don't want to be influenced demonically. I don't want to be influenced satanically. Can we? You best believe. Some of you might have even encountered it before you got in here today. Because again, guys, when we're talking about demons, when we're talking about demonic activity, we're talking about, this is how I define it, any thought, any action, any identity that I give myself or give to someone out there that is opposed to who God is or what God has spoken in His Word. It comes in direct opposition of that. So again, when we begin to realize how quick Jesus is to point this out, when we can see how effective they can be at their job, I want to just point out one scene to kind of rip the mask off of this demon stuff. So Jesus is talking to his disciples, the 12. Okay, and he's telling them, hey, the Son of Man is going to be arrested. He's going to be killed. And Peter, remember this scene? Peter's like, whoa, time out, Jesus. What you talking about? You're going to be punished, killed? We're not having that. That's not going down. Do you remember what Jesus says to him there, guys? It's one of the most famous lines. If you know where it came from, you know this line. Get behind me, Satan. Is Jesus calling Peter Satan? Is that what's going down here? No, what he's saying is, Peter, right now, like, see, I'm speaking to you about the Father's heart. I'm speaking to you about the way the Father operates. You're not thinking about him. You're thinking about man. You're operating out of fear. You don't have in mind the thing of God. You have in mind the thing of man. So I'm just going to say it like it is. That's satanic. Get out of here. We would be good to do the same with things in our life. So it's funny, as we're talking about this, you can kind of feel like, whoa, like, almost some demon stuff. Like, he said there could be demons in here. Anybody getting a little bit freaked out? And again, this is how they operate, guys. Fear is their playground. And that's why we have to know what it is. Because what do we know about fear? Again, anybody afraid today? Anytime fear is coming up, God's word is super clear. So pretty much the most often repeated command is, hey, don't fear. Don't be afraid. Don't freak out. Why? Because it leads to no good. It's what rules us. We haven't been given a spirit of fear. Anytime fear starts touching you in your marriage, guess what? It's not from God. Anytime fear starts touching you with that little thing that happened on Facebook with a coworker, where's this going? That's not from God. God hasn't given you that spirit. So what spirit has he given us? You can see this in Jesus. You can see this so clearly in the story. And again, I'm to model him. I've been given a spirit that has a power to it, has an authority to it. What's fascinating in these encounters with Jesus and demons, they stand no chance. Why? Because he's pure love. I've been given a spirit of love. And most of all, in these interactions where I think people are my enemy, in these interactions where there's conflict, when there's things going down in my life that are trying to spin me up, God's given me the best thing at all. I have the ability to know in him, in his spirit, I have a mind that is sober. I have a mind that is clear. I have a mind that is alert. I have a mind that is sound. How much would it change your week this week if you could walk around knowing God has given me a mind that is calm and it is sound? Because there's power in there and there's love in there. Guys, that is the spirit he has given us, not fear. Though fear is the playground, why? Because I like to use this little acronym. I don't know where it came from. I saw it years ago. It's helpful to me because when fear is touching me, when I'm getting all spun up, and by the way, I do, like anybody, we're all going to feel fear, right? It's what we do with it. It's how we view it. I can feel fear. I'm just not supposed to be afraid. So when fear comes up in my life, I realize, like, listen, this is just false evidence. There's something I can see at times. There's something that I can hear. That part's real, but it's telling me something that's not true. It's false evidence that appears like it's game over. It's false evidence that appears like we're down and we ain't coming back. It's false evidence that feels like that God doesn't care about me, but it's not true. Guys, that's what's so important. If you looked at this story could be so much about the creepy graveyard. It could be about the demons. It could be about the pigs running down. And this is what happens to us, right? Instead of remembering that the story's about Jesus. The story's about Jesus. And that when I'm going through those moments in my life where I'm encountering a darkness, when I'm going through these places in my life where something is coming for me and speaking to me and trying to drive me crazy, Jesus has authority over that. And he's coming for me. And he's coming no matter what. Did you see that in the story? As he's unmasking these lies, how fear works, all these creepy things that are nothing in the presence of Jesus. I want you to think about this story, and I want you to think about your story a little bit because there's so many similarities. Did you notice how it started with the storm? Jesus says, hey, I got to go somewhere. I got to get somewhere. And what happens? A storm comes up suddenly. This guy hasn't even met Jesus yet. It says he's been crying out day and night, okay? Like, I'm not doing good. He's a Gentile. He doesn't even know God. He's just crying out. And Jesus is going to get him. And a storm comes up. And what does storm signify to us? Anybody going through a storm in your life? Anybody see your kids going through a storm? Anybody have a friend or someone you love going through a storm? What do they say? God's forgotten me, man. God's left me. I've been praying, but there's this storm. It just like won't go away. Isn't this how we view storms, man? And in this story, isn't it fascinating that the storm doesn't signify that God has left this man? The storm doesn't signify that God has abandoned this guy. The storm signifies that I'm on the way. I'm on the way. And in the spiritual realm, you don't think those people know the value that this seemingly nobody man has to Jesus? And they're trying to whip up a storm to keep him away. Oh, John, to get a little carried away with like storms and the demons. Like, why would Jesus rebuke anything that's from God? Do you know that they can even at times manipulate the forces of nature? Guys, we would do well to read about. Read the book of Job. It's an amazing pullback on this battle and what's happening. Demons, God. Man, he rebukes the storm. The storm signifies that, hey, I'm coming anyway. He's naked. He's exposed. You ever been exposed in your life? You ever come home and they found out about the affair? They found out about what you were really doing with the money. You promised to get the whole eating thing under control, but they found the wrappers in the trash and in the car. You didn't know that the enemy could use overeating to manipulate you, to try to keep you away from God? Oh, we're talking now, aren't we? I've been exposed. I didn't clear the search history out. They know what I was looking at. And this is when God just disgusted with me and turns his back. There's a naked man, and Jesus says, I'm coming anyway. I know everything about you, buddy, and I'm coming anyway. It doesn't say he has a demon. It says he has many demons. It doesn't say he had it for a day, a month. It had it for a long time, many, many years. It doesn't say that they were like, they kind of put him in a bad mood. It says he was powerful. He's violent. He's breaking chains. The guy's out of control. It says he's cutting himself with stones. You thought this cutting thing was new. It's biblical. It goes all the way back. And we begin to think, these are the things that keep God out of our life, right? These are the things when God's given up. I've got too many monsters. I've got too long a time I've been dealing with them. I've tried. I've prayed. I've even put things in place, and I still went out of control and broke out. And maybe I'm not cutting myself with stones, but I'm doing damage with alcohol. I'm doing damage with prescription drugs. I'm doing damage to myself and the words that I'm speaking over my mind. Anybody ever do that? Anybody ever do that? Jesus knows all this about this man. He says, I'm coming anyway. Going back to those red letters, going back to what he's doing, Jesus just shows up and things start to change. Why? Because the fraud of fear is exposed at the feet of Jesus. So many of you are looking for an answer in yourself. So many of you are looking for an answer in a self-help book. So many of you are looking for answers online. You will never find what you're looking for until you find Jesus. I love this quote by C.S. Lewis. It says, look for yourself and you will find only hatred, loneliness, despair, rage, ruin, and decay. But look for Christ. Look for Jesus. You're going to find him. And with him, everything else. Seek first the kingdom. Seek first the king. And everything else is added to you. Jesus just shows up. All these things that would terrify us. What would you do in that scenario? Jesus doesn't give them the top 10 tips on how to deal with spiritual warfare. Jesus doesn't pull out a pamphlet and say, okay, let's go through some stuff. He doesn't pull out some Armani clothes and say, let's first get this. Like, he does something fascinating. He doesn't play around with it. He just says, get out of this guy. You need to come out. Get gone. Goodbye. You don't belong here. And again, guys, could it be that easy? Is that what we're talking about today? Don't you feel like you've tried that, right? But a lot of us, what we do is this. We go to the Bible and we say, okay, what it's my job to do when I'm dealing with lust, what it's my job to do when I'm dealing with alcohol, what's my job to do with this money issue that I'm going through. Fill in the blank. Now, resist the devil. Come on, right? I'm really gonna buckle down with my devotions, and I'm gonna put some like filters on stuff, and I'm gonna have an accountability buddy over here. All good things, right? How's that working out for a lot of you guys? Resisting. Stop it. We forget something. It's what's happening there on the beach. Resisting the devil for you and me is nothing. We're no match for the devil. What is this verse talking about? Well, we forgot the first part of the verse. How do I resist the devil? I submit to God. It's not my job to battle the devil. It's not my job to talk back to the voices in my head. It's not my job to try to buck up, camper. It's my job to fall on my knees, to allow his word to come over my life. It's my job to submit. It's my job to surrender. Why am I going to play with something in my head that tells me something that God never told me I am? I submit to him. I follow him. Jesus calls it out of this man. The people show up. This guy that's been going wackadoodle in the countryside, this guy that has just wreaked havoc for years, and they come there, they see the demons are departed, and there's this fascinating scene. Again, it doesn't tell us anything that's being said. There's no dialogue recorded. Are they talking? Did they just not want us to know? It just says that he's sitting at his feet. He's clothed now, and he's in his right mind. Just sitting there. Aren't some of the most powerful moments in your life when you're with someone that utterly knows who you are and you don't have to say anything? So much of being done here, guys, is what we need to practice. When was the last time you just sat at the feet of Jesus? Well, I have my devotions every day. It's not what I asked you. When was the last time you just sat there and just let him love you? We've got this little guy now, you all know about Nico, in our life. And the lessons that God teaches us through these little ones. You know, he's starting to talk, saying some words, and that's fun. But my favorite moments with Nico, the moments that take my breath away, are when we're just sitting together. Chief and Nico. One of my favorite times, Danette knows this. Momo? We're going to Momo? Got a little riding lawnmower. He wants to go on the Momo. You know what we say on the Momo? We don't say nothing. Occasionally they'll brum, 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 brum. And I'm riding around the yard with this little guy. Nothing being said, but everything's being spoken. The other day, he just leaned back. It was so intentional. It was so pure. I think I almost hit a tree because oh my goodness, the love that was spoken. The love that I want him to feel for me. When was the last time you just sat at the feet of Jesus? They find this man sitting there. And there's a beautiful thing that happens when we do that. All these things that we're dealing with, all of these terrible words that the enemy wants to call us. What's he calling you today? What's he saying to you about who you are? All of a sudden at the feet of Jesus, he casts out who we aren't because he needs to call out who we are. It's not enough just to get rid of who we aren't. Jesus desperately wants every person in this room today to know this is who you are. This is what I'm calling you to. Do you know that thing that inside of you, it says, man, there has to be more than just showing up to work every day. There has to be more than just redoing the countertops. There has to be more to life than this. When we sit there, it's like, there is, and you're part of it, and I want to use you. He calls out truly who you are. I wonder if Peter, because Peter's with him, I wonder if Peter's having a little deja vu here. Because you know where Peter really met Jesus? When he truly encountered who he was? He met him on a beach. He met him on a beach. He'd been out fishing all day. He heard about this Jesus guy, and Jesus is there, and Jesus had been giving a talk, and Peter comes in, and this Jesus guy tells him to go back out because he hadn't caught any fish and throw your net on the other side. And Peter's like, okay, Jesus, whatever. Like, but he goes out and does it anyway, right? You remember this scene? They can't even haul all the fish in, and something happens. And Peter's like, okay, there's some, I had heard, now I recognize there's something here. There's a power. This is something I've been looking for my whole life. And it's fascinating. Do you remember what Peter did there? What the demons usually do when they run to Jesus. Peter says, depart from me. It's so unnerving to stand in front of pure love when someone who knows everything clearly loves you and wants you. Isn't it strange how our first response is to want to push them away? Like, let me just do this before you do it to me, okay? Depart from me. Why? I'm a sinful man. You don't even know, man. And if I'm writing the story, I'd be like, Jesus, like, you're darn tootin', and so thanks for recognizing because I know everything, and if I let you follow, you'd just be denying me pretty much when I need you the most, actually 3 times, so see ya, homeboy. Good luck. You know, Peter, you got something in here that I didn't put in there, by the way. You don't need to be afraid, man. I get it. I know what you've been told by someone else, but I'm here to tell you something. From now on, with me, who I am, I'm a sinful man. No, you are the guy that I'm going to use to go catch some people, to teach some people about me, to feed my sheep. And Peter and the boys, man, they left it all there. It says they forsook all and followed him. And this is where this part of the story kind of messed me up a little bit, man. Because if this is the pattern, this is what just happened to our nameless guy on the beach. He's free of demons now. And guess what he wants to do? He wants to go with Jesus. Wouldn't you? He's here. He freed me. I got a clear mind. Clear mind says, I think I want to hang out with this guy a lot more. He's begging. You're going, let me go with you. Nope. What? Jesus sent him away, saying, return to your own house and tell them what great things God has done for you. And he went his way and proclaimed throughout the whole city what great things Jesus had done for him. This is where God stopped me, guys. This is where I began to formulate what I know he wants me to say to our people today. This is what he wants to say to me. There's so many of us when we think about this concept of following Jesus. There's so many of us that have been lied to about who God would call and how he would call people. Who could he use? Over and over I hear as a pastor people play me their list of why they can't be used, what they've done. And it's precisely why God wants to use you. It's fascinating to me that Jesus recognizes this man has had such a radical encounter. This man has gone from such hopelessness to such hope. All I got to do is send him back. He gets it. I got to wonder what the disciples are thinking, like, whoa. He graduated? He just started, man. Like, Jesus, wouldn't you be afraid to send this guy back? Have you heard what he's doing? No. This man gets it. I'm sending him back. Because he's not sending him back without anything, is he? Looks like it. I mean, I didn't see that he's got a car or a chariot or a girl or a sidekick. He says, I want you to go back with something in your heart. I want you to go back with something in your mind. I want you to go back with something in your mouth. Because fear's going to try to get this guy, right? They saw me naked. I mean, everyone had those dreams? And then people's like worst nightmare, you're somewhere, it's like, I'm naked, oh my goodness, they all see me. Go back there. I hurt those people. They hurt me. That's where the bad stuff happened. Yeah, we don't want to be thinking about that. I want you dwelling on, I want you focused on what happened right here. What God has done for you. You want an antidote to fear? You want a surefire way to know that fear has no place in your life? Start rehearsing what God has done for you. You take 30 seconds before you leave this room. If you walked in here and you just had something to did. They're spending more time talking about what happened when they were a youth or when they were in college. And the enemy is having a heyday rather than me taking time to recognize that the God of the universe sent his son down, not just to cross a lake for me, but to go to the cross for me, to give me back my very life. Fear has no home in a heart filled with gratitude. And that's so important, guys, because your life is always, I promise you, moving in the direction of your strongest thought. You can walk out of here spun up about whatever you were spun up before. How many people thinking about the holidays? How many people spun up about what side dish you're going to bring? Or who's going to be there to eat it? Or who won't be there to eat it? Or why we're not going there? You can walk out of here thinking about that, talking about that with your loved ones, and feeling everything that goes with that. Some of you feeling it right now. Or you can walk out of here today rehearsing, reminding yourself, reflecting on what God has done in my life. And it's so important because we do not realize, just like this man, he's begging Jesus to go with him, which means he doesn't want to go back there, right? And there's places that God is calling everybody in this room to go that we don't want to go. If we're honest, it's people we don't want to see. And there's this fascinating thing in the scriptures, there's this fascinating thing in this story that sometimes it's the place that you want to go the least, that God wants to use you the most. He sent him back. He sent the crazy man back. He sent the insane guy back. Why? Because Jesus knows there's people in that town. And by the way, remember, they rejected Jesus because the pigs got sent out, or the demons got sent out to the pigs, and the pigs rushed down the hill, ran into the water, says they all drowned. So it was 2,000 pigs. The people freaked out, like, Jesus, you got to get out of here, which is fascinating, isn't it? Fascinating that the demons left that guy, and Jesus gave him permission to go into the pigs. But what I find really fascinating is that the people cared more about the pigs than they did about the person. The people weren't celebrating the fact that this man had been restored back to their community. They were worried about, we just lost a bunch of money, man. We just lost a bunch of stuff that was ours. And they sent Jesus out of there. A lot of people think, was Jesus surprised? Like, oh man, shoot, I didn't know that was going to happen. Oh great, now I can't stay because it says he left. But did he leave? No. He sends this guy back. I wonder. There's been a lot of speculation. I almost didn't deal with this pig thing because, everybody wants to it's this, it's that. I would just say this, man. You think some people got into trouble because of that? It says roughly it was worth a couple mil, these pigs were. Think anybody might have lost their job? I mean, there's no pigs left, by the way. When some of these guys came home and had to tell their spouse why there was no money coming in, trying to explain that just the pigs ran down the hill and they all drowned. By the way, pigs are excellent swimmers. I don't know if you knew this. They're very buoyant. My daughter swam with some down the Bahamas. We do the doggy paddle. They're good. What do you mean? They just all drown. You sound crazy. What were you really doing? Babe, marital conflict that started from something in what realm? Maybe they break up. I'm entirely speculating here. Maybe he's out on the street. Maybe he spent all this time, can't find a job now. He's got this mind. That's a crazy dude to let the pigs run and drown. Forget that, man. And when he's at the end of his rope, he meets a man. Doesn't say, you're crazy. He says, I know exactly how you feel. I know what it's like to lose everything, including my mind. But let me tell you about a man that I met. See, guys, when we think about God sending us back, you know what's funny? Who listens to me the most when I preach? You know who listens to me the most at men's group? You know who listens to me the most when I'm out on the street talking to people? Because plenty of people dismiss me, plenty of people dismiss me. You know who listens to me the most? The people in the tombs. Those of you today that are at the end of your rope, those of you that are dealing with some demons right now, those of you that have people that you love that are dealing with this stuff, you're keyed in and you're listening, because if this is true, you want it. Dare I say, honestly, that the only place you can truly meet God, because those people saw Jesus there, right? They sent him away. What was the difference with this guy? Because that guy was in the graveyard. That guy was at the end. He was the walking dead. And this man is offering hope. See, this isn't about feel good. Jesus isn't coming to improve anybody a little bit today. Jesus is talking to people that want to be born again. Jesus is appealing to people that are saying, this life, I can't handle anymore. I'm not looking for a little bit better. This whole thing needs to go away. Good, because in order to do this, you have to be born again. It's the most beautiful thing at all, because then you really get to see what can truly rule you. God ruling you. So you can't beg God to heal you. And then they stay loyal to what's killing you, to let those thoughts come back, to let those monsters come back. He wants the whole thing. Because the promise is this. It's not an improved heart. It's not a, kind of doing better. He's saying, listen, through Jesus, through his blood, through his authority, I'm going to give you a whole new heart. That spirit that's been messing you up, I'm going to give you a new spirit. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness. You know the whole shebang. I'm going to take your heart of stone out, the jaded one, the cynical one, and I'm going to give you one that cares. I'm going to give you one that when you go back and you see those people and they remind you of you, you're going to stop and just like me, call that stuff out of them. And that's where I want to land today, guys. I'm haunted by this call from Jesus. How many of us in the past, let's just say a week, have spent any time returning to our workplaces, returning to our homes, returning to our communities, even here today? How many of us have taken any time to just say, can I just tell you what God did for me this week? My best part and worst part of men's group is when at the beginning I say, guys, tell me what God's doing. My worst nights are when everyone sits there and looks at me like I'm crazy. And the best nights are when these guys say, I got to share, man. I got to tell you what he's doing. It didn't look good, but Jesus came anyway. It didn't sound good, but Jesus came anyway. What would it look like if we all, every single believer in here today, got up with the belief that God wanted all of us to return to our houses today to share with our kids, to share with the people that we get on social media with, to share with our neighbors. Hey, can I just tell you how God has blessed my life? Can I just take 30 seconds and tell you about my Jesus? And I want to ask you this then, if you thought, well, that's not for me. Where did that thought come from? That sounds kind of scary. Where did that thought come from? Where did that spirit come from? So call me crazy. I almost called this sermon that, by the way. I thought we'd cast out some demons before we leave today. And so here's what I'd like you to do. The worship team is going to come up, and they're gonna play a song that I hope wrecks some people in here, because it talks about this concept. It's why I got into ministry. There's this overwhelming question that rides in my life, because God met me in the tomb, people, trust me. And he just showed up one day, literally showed up in a church. I wasn't trying to listen. I didn't care. He just showed up and he got me. But there's this overwhelming question. I need to get rid of who I am so we can call out, or who I'm not so we can call out who I am. And I'm the guy that for some reason that he loves. So I just want to ask you this question as you're sitting there today, man. Same question Jesus asked, what is your name? Was he call you? And if it's anything other than love, it's not him. And I want to just ask you to sit there and hear from him. And what I find fascinating is it never tells us this man's name in the scriptures. Did you see that? It never tells us. But you know what it tells us in the word? In Revelation 2, it says that there's a place for the faithful. There's a moment. And there's these stones. There's these white stones. And it says that your name is written on that stone, and only God knows it. And he wants to whisper it to you before you leave here today, so we can go out and tell the world what he's done for us. So listen and reflect.